Welcome! I'm Johan Nilsson.
And I'm Lincoln Murphy, and this is Impact Weekly. We're here to help you make your customers successful. Each week, we answer your most pressing customer success management questions by relying on our years of experience with companies around the world.
Let's get this going. Hey, welcome back to Impact Weekly. We have another episode and we have another question. I think this is actually a real funny one. The question goes like this. Why should I even consider taking a job in customer success? And especially after listening to your podcast. So I think that's funny. This person actually said, "I love your podcast." So, but I see where they're coming from, and I think we both laughed at this and thought it was real fun. And of course, I mean, to start off with, if you listen to our podcast, we bring up a lot of things that can go wrong. We bring up a lot of challenges, and you can kind of compare this to listening to doctors or medical advice podcast on that, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean that was our idea with this podcast, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Just to be perfectly transparent, we basically had a bunch of questions that we had received from people, either students in Impact Academy or just questions that came in, through all of our different social channels. And some of those questions were asked multiple times or in slightly different ways, but we're like, those are things that we should probably answer. And we thought a podcast would be the best way to do that. So that was about the extent of, like the strategic planning here. So, in hindsight, going back and kind of thinking about things, I guess if we had to pick the audience for this, which we didn't do, we didn't lay it out like that. But if we had done that, it would be people that are in customer success already who are having, running into issues, challenges, struggles, they do in reality. Right. Exactly. So this was at its core, this is a Q&A type of podcast. This isn't an interview series or, a narrative, something like that. This is just where we take one question each week and we answer in depth. And we never really thought much more about it until literally we got this comment, which was like, again, love the podcast, but if I was thinking about getting into customer success, I would run away. Like, okay, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, imagine listening to like a medical podcast, listening to all the diseases and illnesses in the world, and you would probably be a little bit afraid of getting sick from everything, right? So,
well, I actually, and I mean, as not to compare what we do with with doctors,
no, it's a different thing. But yeah,
but there's something there that I think is really important. Very often, and maybe you've experienced, I've definitely experienced this, where you go to a doctor and they say something and you're like, why did you just say that to me? You're like, what am I supposed to do with that information now that you just told me this? And, you just scared me. But they're doctors are trained in a certain way and they deal with this stuff all the time. And so, hopefully not all of them are like this, but sometimes certain doctors don't necessarily have empathy in the way that we would hope. And so they just kind of say things. It's nothing to them because it's what they deal with and talk about all day long. And again, not saying that we're doctors here, but it's kind of that same thing, right? We deal with this stuff all day long. I live and breathe and sleep this. And so when I'm talking about these issues or, bringing up the answers to these questions, you and I are having, conversations, offline.
Yeah.
We're not thinking about, we're not thinking about anything else except just kind of answering the question, just getting to the bottom of what's going on, solving for whatever we're trying to solve for and moving on. And, I think in a podcast like this, where there is at least the possibility of a wider audience, just need to
Yes.
be more aware of that.
Yeah.
At the same time, I don't. I think what we're doing is valuable. If I didn't think it was valuable, I wouldn't want to do it.
No.
And if that does make, and this may be a controversial way of looking at it, but if it does make someone thinking about getting into customer success go, do I really want to do this? Then I don't know that that's an incredibly bad thing.
Mm.
I think if the only thing somebody ever listens to who's thinking about getting into customer success is a podcast that only talks about the good stuff,
Yeah.
their expectations are being severely mismanaged. Now, of course, we could go completely the wrong direction in a negative way and just turn everybody away. But and I don't think we do that.
No. No.
But I also think we need to be realistic about this. Customer success is fantastic, and we'll talk about that in a second, because I really do want to make sure we talk about
Yeah.
why this is an awesome career, why
Yeah.
this is an awesome function of business to be a part of. But
Right.
we exist in reality, and this is not always like things don't always work exactly perfectly,
Exactly.
which is the whole point of this podcast. Like, let's take those things that aren't working perfectly, or issues that arise, and
Yeah.
let's help you solve for them so that you can thrive in this role that you've chosen.
Exactly. No, I think that's a super point you make there. And why, back to the reason for starting this podcast, is that we noticed also that a lot of people are maybe a little bit alone in their company, in their role. They don't have a lot of people to talk to and get advice around these things. And that's why we received over and over again more or less the same type of questions from all these people we meet in the training programs, all these people we meet in our work, and we wanted to bring that together and find a bay where people can anchor and get advice in this area that I think is missing. So that's why we do this, and I think that's why we want people to reach out and ask more questions, and hopefully also get good advice, and also get perhaps be a little bit challenged also from the podcast. I mean, that's part of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think if one way to look at things is, if you're not being challenged, if all you're doing is sitting there nodding along, yes, this, I agree with what this person is saying, or maybe even just only being sort of inspired, and only like you're only having like happy feelings, I'm not sure that that's really being super helpful and educating and things. I think that's just called marketing.
Right.
like
Exactly.
like
Exactly.
if you're only agreeing with something, then somebody is only telling you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
That's a reason to kind of question things. So, and we definitely get people that don't necessarily agree with exactly what we say, but I've never had anybody say, look, but I disagree with your way of thinking, or the the overall message. I mean, there may be tactically things that people disagree with, or even how we get to the conclusions that we get to, but overall, I think it's clear what our intent is, which is to help.
Yeah.
And I think, even if you don't have the specific question, and this is what I hope, that even if
Yeah.
you don't have the specific, the specific question that we're covering in an episode, it's not something that you're dealing with, that just listening to how we kind of break it down, the thought process that we use, just going through that, listening to that, I think will help you in your
Yeah.
own situation, and solving for the problems that you do have. So
Exactly.
I think that's I think that's the main thing. And I also want to say, look, this isn't entirely altruistic. I mean, at the end of the day, we do occasionally talk about Impact Academy. We talk about Start Deliver, which is the company that Johan is the CEO of. I talk about how I do consulting, but generally speaking, those are just in passing. We don't run commercials.
Exactly.
We're not sponsored by a mattress company or anything. So I mean, yeah, ultimately this is in service of our businesses, but like really the main thing here is that we answer your questions. So with
Yeah.
that, let's answer this
Yeah,
question.
exactly. No, I mean that's our promise as well, right? We will bring up all these questions we get from you. We have a backlog, but keep posting them to us because we will cover them. But I think I mean, so yeah, let's address this though. Why should you get into customer success? And if I take that from my side, I think what I think is really maybe from a higher level here. If we look at customer success, I think it's the most authentic part of the business or business in general. I would say even it's the core. I mean, it's why business really exists, and it's all also really where we can say how things are actually going and how we are doing. I think it's like it's authentic. It's the moment of truth. It's where the rubber hits the road, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you take, I mean, if you take other parts of the business, marketing, I think I mean, it's of course visionary, but it's usually very high up in the air. It's promises. It's a branding. It's messaging and so on. Sales. I mean, they also talk about a promise.
Mm-hmm.
Product. They build things. They code a lot, but what's really being used of all the code that we deploy, right? Whereas with customer success, that's that's really where our product has to prove our service, our all what we do in the companies where we prove ourselves, right? I've been in sales, I've been talking to customers and prospects, but when you really implement and you set up the product and when you get going, that's where we really prove ourselves. I think that's from my side. I think that's one part of why I think customer success is truly awesome and such a big thing.
You said it really well. I mean, I think it's it's kind of I don't want to. I'm not saying that sales is easy, but it is relatively easy to make those promises, and I'm not even saying that those are promises that can't be kept, but to basically say to a customer, this is what you're going to get the customer to agree to it, and then go do something else. Like
Right.
it's easy to do
Exactly.
that because you don't actually have to deliver on on the promise that was made. Um, that's easy, but also for certainly a certain people with certain characteristics in the way that they operate, that's not super fulfilling. And I think
Yeah.
one of the reasons that you want to be in customer success is you get to take those promises that were made and actually help the customer achieve those things. And
Yeah.
so if that's what drives you, if that's what motivates you, is sort of helping people, in a business setting, I mean, I guess if you really just want to help people, there's
Mm.
other ways to do that. But if you are trying to do that in a job,
Yeah.
then customer success is a great place to do that, to really help the people. Even big companies that we're working with are made up of people, so the
Yes.
stakeholders on the customer side are humans with jobs.
Yes.
And if we do what we're supposed to do, then those people are going to not just reach the goal that the company has, but also individually help them reach their goals. You really get to grow and evolve with your customer. Like it's a it from that standpoint, it's an incredibly I think fulfilling, incredibly like interesting
Yeah.
uh, field versus some other aspects of the business that are very sort of one dimensional, very one note. You kind of do the
Yes.
same thing all the time. Yeah, you might be writing different code for different products, but you're kind of just doing one thing. With customer success and customers at various stages of the life cycle,
Yeah.
different appropriate experiences, all of those things. Like you really get to do some very interesting things on a day to day basis. I know that sometimes in the moment, you don't you can't really appreciate that, but I think when I talk to CSMs about what if they can get away from, they kind of are able to take a step back. If they come to an event like Impact Day, and we're talking, and they're not, they're able to kind of take a step away from the computer or meetings, and they're just talking about what they do. You really get this sense of like fulfillment, and that you just don't get, honestly, talking to people that do other jobs in a company.
No.
And that's, I think, just an incredibly powerful thing about customer success. So it's the relationship aspect of it, but it's not just having that human to human relationship. It's growing and evolving with the customer. Yeah. Yes. I think that's super awesome.
I think that's a fundamental thing for humans, I think, in general, to have this progress part in your life, in your work. So, and that's really what we do. I think we do that with customers. We do that with ourselves. And I think that's the high of the job, right? When you see that you make progress with a customer, it might be a customer that's been struggling, or we've been struggling with. If you turn that things around and you make progress, that's a high. If everything is going really well and this customer is just doing more and more with you, expanding, hitting more and more goals, I mean, that's the high of the job. And I think why I think it's quite important to bring this up as well, is that sometimes we kind of forget about these high moments. We need to remind ourselves, especially if maybe some of you out there are having a little bit harder time right now. It's tougher times. Maybe churn rates are going up and stuff like that. We need to remind ourselves of this as well.
That's a really good point. And I think just because we're humans, even though we're working in a job, in a role in customer success, the humanness still comes through. And so, one of the things that we the royal we, as in humans, the thing that we tend to do is we tend to focus on the negative, right? So, 5 things went really well for me today, but one thing went kind of wrong, and I'm just going to only dwell on that one thing that kind of went wrong. That obviously some different people to do that to different extents, but that's a pretty common human trait. And so I think it is really good to take a step back, to remind yourself of, hey, today, there were some setbacks, some customers were challenging. Maybe I had, a little bit of churn or whatever, but you probably also had some really good things. And it is really important to remind yourself of that. I think, in terms of what we do here on this podcast, it's easy to not talk about those things, because the questions that we're dealing with are the things that are kind of going wrong, or are the challenges. And so, I think we have, it's, I guess, my assumption is always, you have this question, you have this challenge that you're dealing with, but, I assume you also have all these really good things. We just don't talk about that. So my commitment to you, dear listener, is I'm going to try to be a little bit more positive. I'm going to, no guarantees,
no guarantees,
but just try to, I think we should every once in a while, just kind of call out like, hey, this is probably not everything that you're dealing with. This is just one challenge. So it is good to kind of take a step back and look at, just be aware, be present for a second and go, you know what? I've got a lot of good things going on here. Got a couple challenges, but that's just reality. And, it'd be boring if you didn't have some challenges, right?
Definitely. But I think a good point there. And I think also for all you heads of customer success or leading customer success teams, you need to remind yourselves on that as well, and bring up stuff and kind of don't forget to celebrate like good things going on in the team. You probably do that, but it's like something you kind of need to remind yourself on all the time.
Yeah, definitely something to be deliberate with, right?
Deliberate, so exactly.
We sometimes just do those things every once in a while, and I would encourage you to do that a little bit more frequently probably than you do, and to be deliberate in that, because the reality is, Again, now I have to bring it back to reality, but the reality is sometimes CSMs are put in challenging positions that really can seem like they, from their perspective, and maybe it is true, though I don't think it was malicious. Sometimes they feel like they've been set up to fail.
Yeah.
In our Impact Academy training, this the week that we're recording this, like we just went over success potential.
Yeah.
And success potential is one of those things where it essentially tells you whether or not a customer is a good fit or a bad fit. And CSMs that are working with customers that don't have success potential and therefore are a bad fit, they're not really ever going to be able to make that customer successful. Just by definition. And that can really start to weigh on a CSM. And as a head of customer success, you need to recognize that, maybe some of the book of business that's been given to the CSM is, made up of customers that cannot be successful no matter what the CSM does. And you need to address that accordingly, because again, I know some CSMs, have gotten into this business because they just thought it was a really good career path and just wanted a job. But in general, those that stick around, do so because they love it. You kind of have to. I mean, it isn't always easy, and I'm not.
No.
We can't sugarcoat that. But it is something that is awesome when it, again, when you're thinking about all the positives that happen, and that it isn't always these negative things. But we do need to recognize that sometimes CSMs can be spinning their wheels trying to solve for a customer's success when those customers don't have that success potential. And so as a head of customer success, you also need to be doing things to make sure that your CSMs are not in that position. And then as a CSM, you need to recognize when you have customers with whom you're not going to be able to make them successful because they don't have success potential, and then advocate for yourself to your head of customer success to say, hey, we need to carve these customers out of my book of business or something, because no matter what I do, they're not going to be successful. So the point is, like, we have to be realistic about this. We have to look at all the positives for sure. I probably needed to do that more. As a head of customer success, you need to do that more. You need to do that deliberately. But we also need to be aware that some of the quote unquote negatives, no, they're not quote unquote, these are negatives that our CSMs are feeling, are very real. And, something like customers without success potential, that's going to be something that will absolutely burn out your CSMs quickly, because they're just trying whatever they can do to make these customers successful, and it's not working because those customers didn't have success potential in the first place. So that's something to think about as well.
Yeah. That's a great point. I think that also comes back to this question: why should I get into customer success? I mean, keep in mind what company and what leadership team you sign up to do customer success in, because if, like your example there, if there are things, I mean, then you will have a hard time no matter what. So I think that's something maybe it's hard to assess in an interview or so, but maybe look at who else is in that company or that team or so on. I think that's gonna play out big time. Who is running the company, who's running the division or the team where you are signing up for a customer success job.
Yeah, I mean, I think let's just talk about that for a second, because I think there's a lot going on in that, and I don't want to gloss over that fact. A lot of CSMs that are unhappy in their role are that way because, and I'm not trying to blame them for being in this situation, but they were probably not deliberate in the type of role that they were willing to take. I hear this from time to time, which is, I just want a job in customer success. It's like, okay, what kind of company? Let's just startup or an established company. Oh, either. Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. If if you don't know the difference between a startup and an established company, this is going to be an issue because, as a CSM in an early stage startup, and then what stage of startup, but let's say a CSM in an early stage startup, you have to be comfortable with no structure, coming up with stuff on your own. A lot of
Exactly.
uncertainty,
Yes.
maybe not even product market fit from the so like you don't even know what success looks like for your customers. But it's really cool because you don't have those things, so you get to kind of, build the airplane as you jump off the cliff. I can't remember what Reid Hoffman said, the founder of LinkedIn, but something like that, right?
Yeah.
So like you get to there's a because of that lack of structure, you get to do a lot of really cool things. But if you are someone that thrives in an environment with structure, that is going to be like the worst place for you.
Yeah.
And vice
Definitely.
versa. If you're like, oh, I want to build things, I want to come up with how to solve for these issues in the moment, and you go to work because you just wanted to be in customer success, you go to work at a large enterprise company, where everything is very structured, and you just kind of have to fit into their SOP, their standard operating procedure. You are going to be miserable. So you have to be deliberate. And this isn't just for customer success. This is kind of like, how do you figure out what kind of job would be best for you? And that's something you may not know right out of the gate. If you're just out of school, you may have to take some time. But I would say even then, like, create a hypothesis. Where do you think,
Yes.
based on what you know about yourself, where do you think you would thrive? And then from a customer success specific standpoint, like, what kind of customers do you want to work with? What kind of engagement
Yeah.
model do you think would work best for your personality,
Yeah.
for the way that you work? And then be deliberate about the types of companies that you
Yeah.
seek out. I think that's a really important thing that,
Yeah.
it's just, if you're not thinking of it that way, you're like, oh, I just want to be a CSM. So I'll just
It's important.
go to whatever company will hire me. Now, I get, by the way, I mean, let's be real. Sometimes you just need a job.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Go do what you got to do. But while you're in that job that you shouldn't be in, because
Exactly.
and you're
Yeah.
miserable, start figuring out where, how you could thrive, and then, then go look for a job with the characteristics that where you would thrive. But I think that's one of the things that, just from a happiness standpoint,
Yes.
as a CSM or head of CS as well. I mean, obviously, it's going
Of
to be,
course.
you're going to have different parameters here, but it's the same thing. You want to make sure you're going somewhere that you can thrive, and so that a lot of the problems that we deal with on this podcast, you won't have to deal with.
Right.
That's really ideally the situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so
No.
you can do things to sort of control your happiness a little bit, but also, even in probably bad situations, you're probably still dealing with some good stuff. So take a step back, be appreciative of the good things that happen. Don't just focus on the negative. I will also try to focus on more positive things as we go forward here. But with that,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we can give some concrete,
Yes.
practical things here, action
Yes.
items.
So, yes. So why should you consider working in customer success? 3 concrete things here. So I'll start off. So, I mean, we were talking about it a little bit just before here, but I mean, it's a wide job. So if you're early in your career and you don't know exactly where you want to go, customer success is a great way to get into the core of the company and learn a lot. So you will learn about your customers, you will learn about your product, you will understand sales, you will understand a lot of things in the company, and it's a great springboard for whatever career direction you want to take. So if you're early and you don't know where to go, that's a great way to start.
Wow, I love that. Yeah. The thing that I would say, so number 2 would be, um, do you want to make a difference? Like, is that what you're motivated by? And
Oh yeah.
making a real difference with your customers. If you, or with the people that you work with, let's say it like that. if you want to make a difference in the lives of the people that you work with, customer success is an amazing opportunity for you to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Number 3 here, as in all jobs, but maybe even more so actually for customer success. Who would you report to? Who is the leader? Are they committed to customer success? Are they ready to invest in you and what you want to do? So be careful about that, because that's going to determine how happy you will be in the jobs. So those are our 3 things. Thanks for listening in, and I'll see you all soon. Hey, thanks for listening. Do you want to bring your customer success to the next level? Check out Impact Academy. We have training programs for customer success managers and for leaders in customer success.